To PFI or not to PFI? Well, that could be the question. More specifically, to privately financed initiative or not to private finance initiative. The Chancellor George Osborne is changing the private finance initiative to make it more public and less private. That's what everyone believes for tomorrow. PFIs in their present form were originally introduced back in the Major government in 1992. Traditionally, before PFI, government had always delivered public sector construction projects from the money available from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, in other words, through taxation and through direct funding. PFI was the new way to deliver this, which meant that the government didn't have to actually show it on the books. It was a way of off-balance sheet financing, effectively, and that's what made it so appealing to the politicians. The Labour opposition, when it was introduced, were very, very highly critical of it. Harriet Harman called it backdoor privatisation, and Alistair Dowling, who went on to become the Chancellor of the Exchequer, said that the savings now could be countered by the formidable commitment to revenue expenditure in years to come. And that attitude suddenly changed when Labour came into power themselves in 97, and the then Health Secretary, Alan Milburn, announced that it's PFI or bust to enable them to get through the vast public expenditure projects that they had in hand. So the last Labour government did finance most of the building for schools and maintenance of hospitals, schools, other expensive investments by asking the private sector to bear the cost of it. But then, of course, what that means is that essentially it's a lease-back operation, so they lease it, which means that the government then is into actually paying the funds to the private companies, the consortia, that have actually put the money up for the projects, and that is then for 30 years, in some cases as much as 60 years. So public services improved, but what was the cost of it? Well, that's the question that the present government's asking. And George Osborne is particularly, under the Treasury under him, is particularly saying that these contracts are not value for money. And the huge long-term liabilities have been racked up by this almost flagrant use of PFI, in their opinion. Now, this also has been aggravated by what they consider are very, very poor negotiations that have taken place on these PFI initiatives. Consequently, one of the things where George Osborne is supposedly going to be looking for revenue clawback is actually in the PFI arrangements. So the autumn statement tomorrow, as well as other things about tax that's going to be there, one of the announcements is meant to be PFI2, son of PFI, which is a means where the taxpayer is also going to take a percentage of the profits back from these PFI agreements. And that means that each project will actually be a little bit smaller than the previous ones. There'll be a public interest, if you like, want of a better phrase, public interest director on the board of each project, which means that they will be there to watch over and look after the taxpayers' interests. And in addition, the stakes will be in these companies. The taxpayer will have a stake in them through the government of up to 49%, but they reckon that the norm is going to be somewhere in the region of about 20%. They're going to be smaller, they're going to be lighter, simpler, and they're going to involve less debt. That's the bottom line. And they'll no longer include what they call soft facilities. So that means like catering contracts and management contracts. They're out. It's basically capital expenditure that's going to be there. There's also an expectation that the Treasury is going to announce that it's managed to actually claw back some 2.5 billion of savings over the lifetime of the existing PFI deals. And that means that they've got 1 billion more coming there into the pot than they originally thought. Even so, put all this into perspective, according to the Office for National Statistics, the total cost in the future to taxpayers of PFI at today's cost is 144 billion. So when you're clawing back even 2.5 billion, every little helps.